Okay, last week we spoke about a person who's gluten intolerant, and we were able to identify that there are many different kinds of gluten intolerance. So some people are a chola sheyesh b'hem sakana, and for those people it would be usher for them to eat matzah at all, unless they could find a matzah substitute that does not have gluten, which there are. There are oat matzahs, or spelt. But there are some people who are even intolerant of that. People who have perhaps Crohn's or colitis may have problems with that as well. And for those people, they're not permitted to eat matzah at all. And they're totally patur from the mitzvah. There are other people who have a milder gluten intolerance, and therefore one could argue that they are either a chola she'ein bahem sakana, or they only qualify as a mitzvah, as a person who experiences pain. Now, the only time a person is patur from the mitzvah because they're mitzvah is for yeshiva sukkah, is for living in a sukkah. But you're not patur from the mitzvah just because the mitzvah gives you discomfort or pain. So you have to sort of endure the pain, like we saw in the Gemara when it came to Dalit Kosos. You have to, Rav Yehuda, the Gemara said, would get a terrible headache for wrap his head for 7 weeks from Pesach to Shavuos in order to endure the wine. So that we saw is not enough of a reason. But if you're a choila she'ein bo sakana, so then we saw differing opinions. We saw the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, who says that if you're nafal mishkav, if you're bedridden, then you're also patur from the mitzvah. But here's where it gets a little bit murky. What if a person can tolerate a small amount of matzah, but cannot tolerate a large amount of matzah? So there are clearly allowances, and this is something that a person would have to consult with their physician. I can tolerate a small amount of matzah, maybe a quarter of a matzah. So that's already, according to most poskim, that's already a KZayis, at least to fulfill a deoraisa din. We're machmir that we double the size of KZayis, and anytime there's a Torah, a biblical mitzvah that we want to fulfill. I'm lazy tonight, Shamar. So
fine.
Just sitting. So because we're machmir, we tell a person to double the size of the KZayis. I gave him to double the size of the KZayis. So whereas a quarter of a shmura matzah is approximately a KZayis, for motzi matzah you're supposed to eat a half a shmura matzah. For korech, which is a rabbinic mitzvah, you eat only a quarter of a matzah with maror. And for afikomen, also because it's potentially a mitzvah deoraisa, so we make a person have 2 KZayis, which is a half a matzah. So a healthy person should eat no less than 1 1/4 shmura matzahs at the night of the Seder, at each Seder, which is not a lot. I mean, you can polish off a couple of shmura matzahs for breakfast with some cream cheese, so just think of it that way, right? In other words, so you just have to pace yourself and not eat the Rebbitzins roast beef, and just save room for the matzah. But what about a chola? What about a person who the doctors say, listen, you can only eat, at the most, you can only eat a quarter of the matzah? So the interesting shaila that comes up in the poskim is, so when should you eat it? There are 3 times when we eat matzah. There's motzi matzah at the beginning. There's korech, which would seem the least likely time to eat it because there's only a derabanan, l'kulei alma bizman hazeh. Or do you eat it at afikom? Okay, so this is where. So before we get into any of the lumdus tonight, let me just tell you the punchline already, okay? In source number 8 in your sheet, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, it's a whole sif. It's the whole siman is one sif. Shulchan Aruch says in siman Taf Pei Beis, Mi she'ein lo matzah mishumeres ela KZayis. Let's say a person does not have matzah that was protected from becoming chametz. Source number 8.
That's not the one. Mishain Matzah Shmura.
Okay,
keep reading.
So we just
sorry.
We just skipped the title.
Sorry.
Okay, the Shmura, the Mishain Lo Matzah Shmura. That's the person who doesn't have Shmura Matzah. Now, the question is, what does Shmura Matzah mean? You and I use the term Shmura Matzah to describe the partially edible hand-baked matzahs. But the word matzah shmura in the Shulchan Aruch really means there's a machlokus in the poskim. Every matzah has to be shmura. Every matzah has to be watched over to make sure that it doesn't become chametz. That's what is really meant in Shulchan Aruch by matzah shmura. The question is, in the poskim, there's a machlokus. Does it have to be watched from the time of Kitzira or from the time of it's being mixed with water, right? Mm-hmm. So we are generally, we say, as long as it's watched from the time that you mixed it with water and it's protected and watched from not becoming chametz, it's called shmura, right? And therefore it's kosher lePesach. But we're machmir the night of the Seder to paskin like those opinions who say that if it's not watched from the time of Kitzira, from the time of harvest, it's considered to be, it's not considered to be shmura. And therefore we're machmir to eat only that kind of matzah. But technically, Manischewitz matzah that you buy in the 5-pound container is also matzah shmura, at least according to one opinion. The Bir Halacha points this out in the Sif, but so that's, I just wanted to just clarify the terminology that we're dealing with. So when it says that you only have matzah mishumeris, we mean that you only have matzah. You only have a KZayis of Matzah to eat. When should you eat it? So mevorech al achilas moror v'ochel, u'cheshegomer sudasu mimatzah she'ena mishumeres, mevorech al achilas matzah v'ochel oso KZayis, ve'eno toim achar of klom. So you're not going to make hamotzi. You're only going to be eating moror in the course of the meal. And when you finish your meal, from matzah she'ena mishumeres, from matzah that has not been properly watched, so you're not 100% sure that it's kosher a matzah with which you can be yotzei the mitzvah. Mevorech al achilas matzah va'ochel oso KZayis ve'eno toim acharav klum. So you make a bracha on achilas matzah, and you eat that KZayis, and then you don't taste at the very end for the afikomen. So the svara of this is brought from the Rif, is that there's a mitzvah of achilas matzah, but there's also a mitzvah that the Chachamim mandated after the Korban Pesach was no longer bringable, that the last thing that you should taste in the night of the Seder is the tam of matzah. So efshel l'kayim shneim, you can fulfill both of them by saving that one KZayis of matzah until the end of the Seder. And therefore, save whatever matzah you can until then.
So you would save it till the afikomen. You would make vorach al achilas matzah, and then eat the afikomen.
That's right. And you'd also, presumably, you don't have to. You've already washed on whatever stuff you're eating. It's a whole question in the poskim. What kind of bread are you eating before then? It's not matzah shmura because it hasn't been washed properly. But for whatever. I mean, this is not really practical today, because all of our matzah is shmura in this sense. But in the times of the Shulchan Aruch, there was such a thing as unleavened bread, which was not carefully watched, right? So you can still make hamotzi, but you can't deem it correctly matzah.
Is that like egg matzah?
I don't know. I'm not sure. This is really tangential to our soup.
So you're keeping with the shmura from Kitzira, right? By shmura you mean from Kitzira?
No, not necessarily. The point that we're trying to make is that if you only have one KZayis of real matzah, you should save it until the end. That's the main point. Okay. You take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Ve'eno toim achar of klum, u'b'chomo b'chol makom la'achar afikomen. And as we do in all places, it should be the last thing you eat after dessert. V'hinei kol zeh b'she'en lo rak KZayis echad shmura. אבל אם יש לו שני זיסים, אוכל KZayis אחד בתחילת אכילתו, ומברך עליו המוציא, ועל אכילת מצה, וכזayis אחר יאכלנו אחר גמר סעודתו לשם אפיקום. He says, but this is only if you only have one KZayis of matzah. But if you have two KZayis of matzah, so then you can make the bracha of al achilas matzah together with the hamotzi at the beginning of the meal, and then eat the afikomen at the end of the meal. But here's the relevant part that the Mishnah Berurah says: V'chola she'enu yachol echol rak KZayis, o mi she'ein lo shum matzah rak KZayis, Now let's say a person only has, either he's a choila who can only eat a KZayis, or he is or he only has a KZayis of Matzah, which has happened many times in our history, unfortunately, where Matzah was a rarity. So what should he do? Yochal tafshilo below hamotzi. He should eat his meal without making hamotzi at all. He has neither bread nor matzah. He has no bread, there's no lechem on which to make hamotzi. So just eat your meal. V'achar sudaso yivarech hamotzi, ve'alachilas matzah. You should make hamotzi and alachilas matzah, v'yochel oso KZayis. And then you should eat that KZayis. Avalim ein lo gam ken yayin, but that's only assuming that you have wine at the beginning of the meal. In which case you would make kiddush, then you would eat your meal, have your potatoes, meat and potatoes. Then save your one KZayis of matzah for the afikomen. But let's say, im ein lo gam ken yayin. Let's say not only do you only have one KZayis of matzah, but you also don't have any wine. So im kain tzarich lakadosh al hamatzah tchila ve'achar kach yochal tavshila. So then it's efshir l'kain shneim, because you have to now make the kiddush on matzah. So therefore make the kiddush on matzah at the beginning, and then you eat your meat and potatoes. Okay? So optimally, if you can only eat one KZayis, eat it at the afikomen, assuming that you have wine to make kiddush at the beginning of the meal. Okay. Now, one other thing.
Hold it. You said before you really should have the advice of a doctor, right?
No, you should have the advice of a doctor.
Yeah, you said before you should have the advice.
Yes, right.
But a lot of people just say, if I eat the matzah, it hurts my stomach.
Right. So we talked about this last week. What we visited last week.
Is that mitzvah doesn't apply?
So no.
Some people really get hurt.
So it depends. There are certain times when a person is mitzdayer, in which case, according to the Shulchan Aruch, simple understanding of the Shulchan Aruch, you still have to eat the matzah regularly, even though you're going to maybe have some diarrhea from it. You still would have to eat it. What we're talking about is a person will become so ill that they're going to be bedridden as a result.
Sakana.
No, I didn't say sakana. No, I did not say that. There are 3 levels. And this is all something from last week, so I don't want to spend too much time.
Okay, so
Chola sheyesh bo sakana, chola she'ein bo sakana, and mitzdayer. 3 different levels. Okay, got it? So,
yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we're talking in this instance about a person who's a choila, which means that if he were to eat more than a KZayis, he would become bedridden. And in which case, he's patur from eating more than a KZayis. Doctor says you should only eat a KZayis, otherwise you're going to become seriously ill. That person has to now ration when to eat that KZayis. So, Mishnah Berurah says, assuming that you can make kiddush at the beginning, save it for the afikomen, where you can fulfill the rabbinic edict that the last thing that you taste in your mouth is the matzah. Okay? So far, so good? We're all on the same page. All right. Rav Zilberstein has a tshuva in the Sefer Chashukei Chemed. So in source number 13, I'm just going to skip to that for now. And he says as follows. Ein kiddush ela b'makom su'uda, chola b'machalas hatziliak b'pesach u'b'shabbosas. Now he deals with the shaila of kiddush b'makom su'uda. Now kiddush b'makom su'uda is a very serious thing. How could I be yotzei kiddush if I don't have my meal immediately after kiddush? This is a problem that a lot of people aren't aware of. And you know when it especially becomes an issue is
Kiddush
on
Club.
Pesach at the Kiddush Club. On Pesach at the Kiddush Club. Why? Why is it an issue on Pesach at the Kiddush Club? So first of all, if you recall, we had our shir on whether you can be yotzei on a shot glass of schnapps, Kiddush bichlal. And we saw that the majority of poskim hold that you cannot. And it's only a minority of poskim, primarily Hasidic poskim, who hold that you can. So we advocated in the past that a person should have a revius of wine or grape juice, even at Kiddush Club, in order to be yotzei Kiddush, because otherwise you can't eat. Okay? Put that to the side for a second. There's another factor that a person has to fulfill in order to be Yotzei Kiddush every Shabbos and every Yom Tov, and that is Kiddush b'Makom Suda. A person has to eat his meal accompanying Kiddush in order to elevate the status of that Kiddush, in order to append it. He's got to append it to a meal in order for that Kiddush to have the rabbinically ordained status of allowing him now to eat. If a person were to make Kiddush on either Friday night or Shabbos without having the Suda immediately afterwards, he would not be Yotzei Kiddush. And this is a sugya in Hilchas Shabbos. It's not a sugya primarily in Hilchas Pesach, but it's a sugya in Hilchas Shabbos, which if we have time, we'll go through momentarily. Now, where does it become a problem? So the definition of Suda is either Hamotzi or a Mezainis. Today, thank God, everyone's not gebrachts, right? Everyone doesn't eat gebrachts, or at least the products that we buy are non-gebrachts. Even the tam-tams for Pesach that we buy are non-gebrachts, right? So what's the problem with non-gebrachts? Gluten-free. Doesn't have a drop of matzah meal in it, so it's not mezonos, it's shahakol. So you're not fulfilling Kiddush because you're not having Kiddush b'Makom Suda. So that's the question that Reb Zilberstein undertakes. We just saw that the Mishnah Berurah says, make Kiddush, have your meat and potatoes, and then save your KZayis of Matzah for the end. Is that going to turn out to be a problem because there's a big gap between Kiddush and the Suda of making Hamotzi? That's really the issue. So, he says like this, She'ela. Shaila is, Adam HaSovel me'i ikul amilanim va'asur lo lechol lechem sheish bo gluten. A person has a problem of the inability to digest starch, and he cannot eat bread because it has gluten. KZayis yinhag b'Pesach k'dei l'kayim mitzvahs achilas matzah. What should he do as far as eating matzah? The KZayis yinhag b'chol shabbosos hashana kasher halechem asur lo v'tzarech l'kadesh b'makom suda. And what should a person do during the rest of the year when he can't have bread and he wants to have kiddush at the kiddush club? So what should he do? He can't have flour. So what should he do?
Well, just generally, if he can't eat hamot, if he can't make hamotzi, if he can't eat bread, then his kiddush is not going to work because he's.
Well, that's the problem. That's the dilemma. So how do we solve that dilemma?
But that's irrelevant to Kiddush Club or at home, because if he comes home and makes Kiddush, he has to make hamotzi on a challah, but he can't eat challah.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's not just during the year, it's not just Kiddush Club.
Right. So thank you for defending the Kiddush Club people.
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay, but point well taken. Okay. So he says tshuva. Lechatchila vaday tzarech liknos olefos matzos olechamim ha'asuyim meishifon o meishibol shual she'ein bahem gluten. So during the rest of the year, on Shabbos and Yom Tov and on Pesach, you certainly would have an obligation of trying to procure matzah or bread that is gluten-free but still qualifies as hamotzi. So it could be made out of oats or spelt. But what if you practically cannot get those kinds of breads? What if they're not available? And again, I don't know if we're going to have time this evening, but there's a whole tshuva on oats, because there's a whole question whether you can be yotzei with oat matzah, the mitzvah of achilas matzah, since even though it's clear that oats is one of the 5 species of grain, there was a couple of scientists in Eretz Yisrael a few years ago, a couple of decades ago probably, who wanted to argue that what we identify as oats today is not the shibola shual that was identified by Chazal. Mm-hmm. But the poskim did not accept their argument. So clearly oats is one of the accepted grains. But there's another problem, and that is that the only kind of grain that is acceptable for the mitzvah of achilas matzah has to be a grain shebali de chimutz, that is leavenable. And oats, the way that they process oats is that they first heat them and then grind it into a flour. And what has been observed scientifically is that if you parch grain before you grind it into flour, it cannot leaven anymore. So that has caused some poskim to say that at least certain kind of oat matzahs cannot be used for the mitzvah of achilas matzah. And what's interesting is that this, like there's oat matzah wars, right? There was about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a whole sichsuch between the Manchester oat matzah factory in England and the Lakewood oat matzah factory. Because the Lakewood oat matzah factory argued that it figured out a technique to make oat matzah without heating up the oats before grinding it into flour. They used a drying process that did not heat it, and therefore it was bali de chimus. And the Manchester had not yet perfected that technique, and therefore there were poskim who were saying you can only buy oat matzah from Lakewood and not buy oat matzah from Manchester. I haven't checked into it recently, so I don't know what the current status is. But if anyone has any information on this, I'd be grateful. In any event, so he says, L'chatchila, try to get yourself oats or spelt matzah. However, im eno yachol lahasig l'chamim elu, nira shebechol shabbos hashana yikadesh v'yishta kos shel kiddush, v'yishta od kos yayin kadesh yeh kiddush b'makom suda k'mavur b'mishnah brura. So he says as follows. He says the Mishnah Brura tells us that if you cannot have Kiddush b'makom suda by having hamotzi or mezainis, you can have Kiddush b'makom suda by having a revius of wine for Kiddush, and then having an additional kos or revius of wine that is in addition to your Kiddush cup. What that essentially means is that if a revius is 3 ounces, drink, or 3.3 ounces, drink 6.6 ounces of wine or grape juice in order to be yotzei the mitzvah of Kiddush, plus an additional revius for Kiddush b'makom suda. Because wine constitutes a seuda if it's drunk in sufficient quantity. Now, where do we know this from? So hold Reb Zilberstein at that point, and he's really referring to a Mishnah Brura that has to do with Kiddush b'makom suda discussed in Hilchos Shabbos. So, really, we'll now go back to source number. Okay. It starts really in the tour in Hilchos Shabbos. You know the Kiddush that we make in the Beis HaKnesses? The tour really didn't like it. The tour wanted to eliminate Kiddush in the Beis HaKnesses.
It's Friday night.
Friday night. Why? Because he felt that there was a problem that it's not Kiddush b'makom suda. Why do we make Kiddush in the Beis HaKnesses Friday night?
For the aniyim.
For the orchim, for the aniyim. It used to be they served meals in the Beis HaKnesses after Ma'ariv for the aniyim. And this minhag of making Kiddush in the Beis HaKnesses Friday night is a layover from that original minhag. So the Torah writes, the Rav Natrunoi Kosav, do you have a sheet?
Yeah.
Kosav Shemakachim Beis HaKnesses Afal Pi Shein Ochlin Sham Afal Pi Shein Kiddush Al B'Makom Suda Afilu Hachi Mekachim B'Bnei Shahat Amas Yain Shel Kiddush Shel Shabbos Refuai Ad Kan. So the Torah quotes Rav Natrunoi Gaon, who says something very bizarre, which is difficult to understand at face value. He says you should make Kiddush in the shul, even if you're not going to have a Suda there, and therefore you can't be Yotzei Kiddush. Nevertheless, tasting wine on Friday night in the Beis HaKnesses for Kiddush is therapeutic. What does that mean? We don't even know what that means. It's a refuah. So the Torah says, V'chol devar of Temuin, Masha Kosav Sheyotzin B'Shmiya Below Te'ima, because the Torah goes on to say that he says, because Rav Natrunoi had also said that you could be Yotzei by just listening to Kiddush without tasting anything. He says, how could you be Yotzei even with tasting the wine? Even if you tasted the wine, you couldn't be Yotzei Kiddush because you're not eating a meal afterwards. And not only that, but if you're not being Yotzei Kiddush with the wine, you can't taste the wine. So it's the whole thing is mufrach. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. How could a person possibly make Kiddush in shul and drink the wine if he's not Yotzei Kiddush because there's no Kiddush b'makom Suda. So v'gam ha'shekos of shetiknu l'kadesh mishum refuah zelo matzinu shlo tiknu osa elo mishum orchin v'keven deleka orchin roi ha'yeh shelo l'kadesh. He says, and this whole thing about wine, tasting wine being therapeutic, he says, I've never seen that before. Where does the Rav Natruanoi get that from? He says it was only instituted because of guests. The ayashir chayli avatline, the kain kos of Rav Hai she'im ein orchin ein mekadshim b'beis hakneses. So, and therefore he says, if I had the ability, I would nullify this minhag. And taka, even to this day, we have different minhagim and different batei knesses. Some shuls make Kiddush Friday night, some shuls don't make Kiddush Friday night. And each minhag has substantial basis on what to rely.
But we don't have adults tasting it on Friday night in shul. We have children.
So hold on a second. So the Beis Yosef says, the Rabbeinu Kasa b'simin Reisha in Gimel b'shem Hagaonim, and this is the source number 2. She'im shasa kos yayin shechayv alav bracha yatsa yedei kiddush v'gomer sudasa b'makom acher. So he says the Torah writes that if you drink wine in one place, you can be Yotzei Kiddush, and you'd have to finish your meal in another place. That's acceptable. But you'd have to drink a revius of wine. But the minhag today is we do not do that. The minhag today is we give it to a tinok instead, and therefore no one drinks. What if there's no tinok in the Beis HaKnesses? If I'm not mistaken, I believe that the person making Kiddush has to drink it, and he just drinks a revius, as the Beis Yosef prescribes. However, comes along the Drisha, and the Drisha writes, quoting from the Beis Yosef that we just saw, he says, if you go to the third line, Nira mipshat devorav shehiven divrei hagaonim derot salomar afilu lo shasa elapam echas mikoshel kiddush atzmo shir shechayv alav bracha achrona ve'alkein zeh ve'alkein kosav lefiza yochel hamakadosh v'chula. The Drisha writes that from the language of the Beis Yosef, it sounds like that as long as you drink a full revius of wine, that's considered to be like kiddush b'makom suda, and therefore you're fine and you can conclude your meal somewhere else. Aval ein li ein nira lefarsh divreihem, ki im sheshasa kos yain shechayv alav bracha, chutz min hakoshel kiddush. Az yatsa yedei kiddush b'makam suda, v'holech v'gomer sudasu b'makam acher. You'd have to drink at least the majority of a revius for kiddush, plus a full revius to be considered kiddush b'makam suda. So according to the Drisha, you would need to have your kiddush drinking, which is usually defined as rov revius, plus you'd have to have a second revius independent. So really it's not really 6.6 ounces, but it's like 1.6 ounces plus 3.3 ounces. So really
4.9.
It's about 5 ounces would be sufficient. Okay? The Chain Kasov, Rav Mordechai Yafa, Ayin Shamsherach, the Lavush says the same thing. Okay. In any event, I just wanted to point that out. So now we understand this idea that the Mishnah Berurah is now, and that's in source number 4. This halacha gets distilled in the Shulchan Aruch. Kasvu hagaonim hada in kiddush al b'makom suda afilu achal davar muat o shasa kos yayin shechayv alav bracha yatzudei kiddush b'makom suda v'gomer sudasu b'makom acher. So the Shulchan Aruch writes that yes, it's true, we have this halacha of ein kiddush ela b'makom suda, but su'uda can be defined as either bread or wine. So if you drink a KZayis of wine, so then you fulfilled the mitzvah of kiddush b'makom suda even when you're not having bread. And that's why he writes, v'davka ochal lechem o shasa yayin, aval ochal peiros lo. But that's only if you eat bread or drink wine, but not if you eat anything else. So again, I say to you that when you go to Kiddush Club, or you're going to eat at home and you're gluten intolerant, if you're, like on Pesach at Kiddush Club in the shul, you're going to make Kiddush, you're going to have your gluten-free, whatever it is, your chazarai, gluten-free chazarai, right? You're not Yotzei Kiddush. And because you're not Yotzei Kiddush, you're not allowed to eat, because it's after davening. So you're mamish violating the halach. So what's the solution? The solution is that is being advocated by the Drisha, the way he understands the halacha, is that you have to have, so first of all, the shot glass of Shlivovitz ain't gonna cut it. That's not gonna work. You'd have to either have wine or grape juice, and you'd have to have a kos that's machzik revius, but you have to drink at least 5 ounces in order to be considered to have kiddush b'makom suda. Okay?
Does everyone have to, or does the person making kiddush?
Everyone.
Okay.
Very good, Alan. Everyone. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah writes in source number 6, Kishir, Dahainu sheyishta shir revius, v'yesh omrim sheinu yotzi kiddush b'makom suda, afilu yishta shir revius, rak tzarech lishtos revius yain milavad hakos shel kiddush. In addition to the kos of kiddush, you have to drink a revius. So to be yotzei kiddush, many poskim say that all you need is a rove revius, right?
Does that mean that I make kiddush for everyone else? They're not here to kiddush? It's not makom suda? I mean, what I'm trying to say is
they can be yotzei kiddush through hearing kiddush,
right?
But then they'd have to eat a suda in order to be yotzei kiddush. Right. If let's say a person hears kiddush and is not toem anything, he's not yotzei kiddush.
Okay.
So this is a real halacha that's nogeya all the time.
So where? Okay, so there's the kiddush club. I understand that part. But a regular kiddush, how is that fulfilled? Because where is the suda in a regular kiddush?
So you're having a mizonos.
Mizonos is the
counts
same
as lechem, also for these purposes.
You mean like a piece of cake?
Right, piece of cake, Ritz cracker. As long as you have a couple of crackers and you have a KZayis, right? So then you're good.
So if you don't eat the crackers and the
right. Let's say you're on a gluten-free diet.
No. It's just you just don't feel like it. You're going to wait till you get home.
Right. So you want to have what?
So you don't make kiddush then, right?
So then you can't eat anything. You haven't been yotzei kiddush yet.
Can I not?
So you're not allowed to drink anything. You're not allowed to eat anything. You'll have to wait till you get home because you can't eat anything until you have kiddush.
So at a congregational kiddush, people have to eat crackers after kiddush is made in order to
or
eat the other stuff.
Drink 5 ounces of grape juice. Right.
5 or 3.3? Because the person making kiddush had the rove cost. So just the second kiddush you cut.
Oh, so you're asking a good question. It sounds like from the Mishnah Berurah that even if you're hearing it from someone else, you have to have a rove revius plus a revius. That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay. Now, what's the point of what do you accomplish by hearing it from somebody else? Just you don't feel like making kiddush.
You have to make it yourself. Yeah.
So when they make kiddush, it should. If the guy's making kiddush doesn't drink himself at all, then how can it be yotzi the children?
So you mean
that's
a
a Friday night
Yeah,
question?
Friday night.
He's not yotzei kiddush. He can all.
How can he be motzi the kids to drink then?
He's not being motzi the kids. The kids
What
drink
is the
because they're ketanim. That's the whole question. Why are we allowed to give them grape juice?
But what is the kiddush? If he's not drinking, then he's not. I don't understand what the whole thing is then.
The whole reason we did it originally was for orchim.
But today, what does
Today it's just a layover. It's just a layover from the original.
But isn't it a bracha v'atola then?
No,
Is
it's
he
not a
not
bracha
drinking?
levatola. Once Chazal instituted to say it, it's not a bracha levatola. Right? It's not a bracha levatola because it's part of the mitzvah of the tefillah of the Beis
He should have to
HaKnesses.
drink though.
But he doesn't. He doesn't have to drink. As long as someone is drinking, that's okay. As long as a child drinks some of the... I can make a borei pri hagafen as part of my kiddush and not drink a sip of that kiddush. Let's say I'm allergic to grape juice. I can still make a borei pri hagafen because that's part of the birkas hamitzvah of kiddush. And then as long as you drink it, so then I'm okay.
Let me just go over that same question. I still don't quite understand. So he makes kiddush for himself and his wife, let's say. No, but she hasn't drunk the wine.
Right.
So she hasn't really fulfilled. She can't really eat.
She can eat. As long as she has a suda, that's perfectly fine. As long as she hears kiddush and then has a suda, which is defined as some kind of flour.
Yeah, right.
Right? then Mizonos or Hamotzi, then she's Yotzei Kiddush. But if she hears her husband's Kiddush and doesn't eat any Mizonos or any Hamotzi, then she hasn't been Yotzei Kiddush.
Mhm.
Similarly, if the person making Kiddush just makes Kiddush and doesn't drink or eat anything further, so then he's also not Yotzei Kiddush.
Also, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Fine. So let's go back now. Just to point out, the Shartzion says in source number 7 in that Mishnah Berurah, he says, "Hu das halavush." He says, he quotes, that's the lavush that the Drisha quoted as well. That you have to have an additional revius in addition to the rov revius that you had for Kiddush. V'rabu achronim ha'omdim b'shitaso. And there are so many achronim who paskin like that, that's the way you should consider to be standardized halacha. Umikol makom, b'kiddush shel shacharis, yesh lismoch ala mekilim im ein lo yain kol kach. He says, when it comes to Kiddush Shabbos morning, you can be more lenient than Kiddush Friday night. Kiddush Friday night, you got to make sure you have the cup of Kiddush plus another cup. But for Shacharis, there's room to be makel since it's only a rabbinic Kiddush in the first place. If you don't have enough if you don't have that much grape juice, right? Aval b'Kiddush halayla ein la hakel bazeh. Va'afilu im yishna od kos echad b'layla milvad zeh, Gam ken yesh la'ayin im nismoch al zeh, the kamer rishonim cholkim al zeh kamo shekasvu kasav b'chidushei Rebbe Kivei. He says, and furthermore, Friday night Kiddush, I'm not so clear that it's a good heter to rely on. So essentially what the Shartzion seems to be concluding is, Shabbos morning, you can rely on this heter of having grape juice instead of mezainis or hamotzi. Preferably, you should have an additional revius in addition to the kos that you're making Kiddush on. But if it's difficult for you, you can be somech on the fact that you just had one revius. Okay?
So can you conclude from here also that Shabbos morning you can make Kiddush on a shot glass of wine?
Not at
Scotch?
all.
No.
No.
Okay.
Totally that's apples and oranges. We're talking about two different things now.
Friday night, don't you have to make the meal on lechem, not just mazonis?
Friday night, don't you have to make so it could be that, let's say you don't have lechem. Let's say you don't have bread.
I know not, but I'm saying, but if you have it.
You're right. No, you're right. So the Mishnah Berurah would probably be saying that we're talking about a case where a guy doesn't have lechem. I think, maybe. I don't know.
Would it be better for him to make, let's say he does have lechem, and only has a little wine, but not enough, right, just a revius, right?
Yeah.
That's a separate example, right? Maybe not even a revius. So you should make a Kiddush on lechem, not on the wine. If it's less than a revius.
If it's less than a revius, yeah.
I think that's taka the halacha.
Yeah, that's taka how we go. Okay. Anyway, Ad Kan. So let's go back to Rav Zilberstein. So he says as follows. So he says, if a person can't get a hold of oat matzah or spelt matzah, or oat challah or spelt challah, if it's a Shabbos during the rest of the year, so what you should do is, Nira de bechol Shabbosus Hashana Yekadish v'yishta kos shel Kiddush, v'yishta od kos yayin k'dei sheyeh Kiddush b'makom suda kin lavor b'Mishnah Berurah. So we've seen that Mishnah Berurah already. That you should really have either 2 KZayis or 1.5 KZayis revios, or 1.5 revios. V'yochel gam uga asuya mitapuchei adama. Then he goes on, and he says, and I also recommend that you should eat something made out of potatoes, some kind of potato flour cake, potato starch cake, or maybe a kugel, maybe that's what he means. O perichot orez, or something made out of rice. What is perichiot? Anyone know? I'm not sure. Pieces, maybe. Okay. Usha'ar tavshilin, or any other kind of cooked food. Ve'afal pi she'en kan suda mipas. Even though this is not halachically a suda, because we saw beferish in the Shulchan Aruch that a suda is defined as either pas or yayin, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the benefit of eating a piece of potato kugel? So he says, "Kedei latzeis is das hayayvitz b'psachim dav kuf yudalad amid aleph shim ein lo pas v'yesh lo shar ma'acholim mekadesh aleim." Because there's an interesting shita from the Yavitz, from Yaakov Emden. I never would have known about this shita had I not seen this tshuva. Shekol davar shesoed lachmahu b'chol zos nechshav lekiddush b'makam suda. That anything that is considered to be filling is considered to be lechem for the purposes of kiddush b'makam suda. That tavshilim elu heim suudas. That these Rabbi Yaakov Emden holds that anything that you fill yourself up on can sometimes be considered your suda. So, we wouldn't be samech on this because it goes contra the Shulchan Aruch. We wouldn't allow you to just make kiddush on rov revius and then to have potato kugel to be yotze your suda, kiddush b'makom suda, because the shitas yavitz is not normative. But if you're going to have your 1.5 or 2 revios of yayin, we also advocate that you should have something that is filling to fulfill the shitas of the Yavitz l'chumra. Now, where's the sheet of the Yavitz?
So is the Kiddush Club normative?
So he says, if you take a look, what is the Yavitz going on? The Yavitz is going on a Mishnah in Maseches Pesachim. The Mishnah, source number 10, the Mishnah Maseches Pesachim says, Mazgulo kos rishon beishamai omrim mevarach al hayom ve'achar kach mevarach al hayayin ubeis hillel omrim mevarach al hayayin ve'achar kach mevarach al hayom. Basic machlokes beishamai beis hillel when you make kiddush. What bracha do you make first? Do you make kiddush first, or do you make bori pri hagafen first? Right, that's the basic
Mishnah brachas.
Right, it's Mishnah brachas as well, but it's in Pesachim too because it deals with the arba kosas, right? So the Gemara now says, what's the reasoning of Beis Hillel? So the second line of that Gemara says, "Ubeis Hillel omrim mevarach al hayayin ve'achar kach mevarach al hayom mipnei shahayayin gorem lekidusha te'amer." Why do you make the bracha on the wine first, bori pri hagafen, and then make kiddush? Because it is only through the wine that kiddush may be said. So says Rashi, "Shahayayin gorem shlekiddush te'amer shim ein lo yayin opas ein lo makadesh." Rashi says that if you don't have bread or wine, you're not permitted to make kiddush. Comes along Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and this is just the standard hagos that you find in the back of the Vilna Shas, and he writes as follows: Nichtav bitzad, nira li, she'im ein lo pas, v'yesh lo shar ma'acholim. It would seem to me, says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, that if you don't have bread, but you have other kinds of food, mekadesh aleihem, then you could make kiddush on those other foods. Shasauda karuya lechem b'chol makom, because after all, a meal is called lechem. In other words, the chiddush is that the word lechem doesn't mean dafka bread made from 5 grains in this context, but rather any meal that is filling is called lechem. B'chol davar shesoed lachmohu heicha delo efsher b'pas. Anything that is filling is called a person's bread if bread is not available. And so therefore, Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, as he says, it's a very lenient ruling, which we don't paskin like in Shulchan Aruch. But as long as it fills you up, it's called your suda. And by that argument, says Reb Zilberstein, at least l'chumra, since wine is not going to really fill you up because you're just drinking, it's better not only to have your extra kos of yayin, but also to have a couple pieces of potato kugel that are filling, so that you'll be able to fulfill this idea of what a seuda is. And he says, V'hu adin lahavdala, and it's not really clear what he means with the words V'hu adin lahavdala, and that's why the Haggah says, Nira shot somewhere b'havdala b'motzoi Shabbos liyomta. But anyway, we won't go there now.
When did Rav Emden, when did he live?
18th century.
Because in Europe, my mother used to tell me this, they didn't have bread very often. Potatoes they always had because they grew them in the backyard.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't know, she never mentioned it in relation to this, but I remember her saying...
Right. Well, potatoes were a much more common staple, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
So you had on Pesach, potatoes and borscht.
That's right. That's right.
So Rabbi Yaakov isn't saying you can make kiddush on Shar Malachim like you can make kiddush on a pot. I mean, actually make kiddush.
It sounds like he is saying that. He's saying
Did you make kiddush on potatoes?
you can even make kiddush on potatoes. That's what it sounds like he's saying.
Lechem. It's lechem.
Because it's
So it's
lechem.
not something you have to
Although
have
he's
after
saying
you-
nearly she'ein lo pas, but he's not saying she'ein lo yayin. So it sounds sort of like what Sam is saying, that you still make kiddush on the wine, but because you don't have bread, but you have
look,
food.
What
that's
is
filling.
what is the context? The context is this Rashi. Rashi says she'im ein lo yayin o pas eino mekadesh. If a person does not have wine or bread, he cannot make kiddush. So that Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, what if you don't have wine or bread, but you have potatoes? You could still make kiddush, because that's called a suda.
That's a step further than Rabbi Silverstein.
Correct. But he's applying that to say that anything that is, any davar so'ed is tantamount to lechem, and therefore could be called kiddush b'makom suda. We're not using Rabbi Yaakov Emden as a carte blanche to let us get away without drinking wine, or to, right, or he's not saying that you can just drink a rov revius and then have potatoes. He's saying you got to drink the 2 cups of wine in order to have kiddush b'makom suda according to the directive of the Mishnah Berurah. But l'ravcha de milsa, but in order to be machmir further, you should always have something that is so aid, like Rav Yaakov Emden says.
How far does he take that? Do you bench after that? Do you? Are you?
He doesn't say. L'cha'ora, he would not tell you to say a bracha, levatala, potentially to say birkas hamazon on it. But his point is that vis-a-vis the mitzvah of kiddush b'makom suda, this is sufficient. Okay.
How does this come back to our original question?
Okay.
Why wouldn't
Therefore,
you be able to say Birkat Hamazon?
because birkas hamazon is only from lechem. Right. It's only for bread, is because it could be there's different criteria as what is called bread. For purposes of kiddush, any food that fills you is called bread. But is that the criterion for birkas hamazon? We don't know. We'd have to analyze it further, how far he would take this sheet. Okay. So therefore, uva Pesach, let's look at the last paragraph. Therefore, uva Pesach, yishtadel le'echol KZayis echad shel Matzah shel chitim, im ein lo shel shar minei dagan. He says, therefore, on Pesach, the person with celiac, who the doctors say should really not be eating grain at all, if he can, he should push himself to eat that 1/4 shmura matzah, right? Me'achar ve'ein bazeh chas v'shalom sakana ki im chashash shel shishulimu pricha. He says the worst that'll happen to this guy because of celiac, that was, I think, Sam, you mentioned that last week. You're not putting yourself in a sakana of an intestinal blockage, God forbid. The worst that'll happen if you eat that 1/4 shmura matzah is that you'll get diarrhea. And what is pricha? I'm not sure.
Pieces, we said no.
Well, Sam, you said
No.
pieces, but
No.
I spelled differently.
No, that's
Where is
It's
it?
a little different.
Does he mean passing?
The chet.
Maybe that's what it means.
Derech is flowers, right?
Or maybe it means just gas. Yeah, could be he'll just get gas. Or indigestion. Ba'al zeh yomar halachma da asvasihi, the shomer mitzvah lo yeda davara. And on that, he should say, this bread is not the bread of affliction, but is the bread of cure. Asvasa is the bread of curative. It's curative bread. And he who observes the mitzvah will know nothing wrong. In other words,
Constipation.
will know. Is that what pricha is?
I just remember something from the Rambam, but I'm not sure.
It seems contradictory. You can't get diarrhea and
I don't
constipation.
know. Some people get constipation
Oh,
from
okay.
eating matzah.
All right, maybe. I'm not sure. Well, I don't think that's what he's talking about
Maybe
over here,
not.
though.
Maybe not.
But the bottom line is that he's suggesting that try to push yourself to eat the KZayis, that one KZayis, and in Mirz Hashem you'll be okay. Hashem will watch over you. V'yachol tavshilo below hamotzi, and therefore eat your meal without hamotzi. V'rak la'achar sudaso yavorech hamotzi al achilas matzah v'yachol oso KZayis, and then after your meal, make hamotzi and al achilas matzah, eat that one KZayis. K'mavur b'mishnah berurah le'inin misha yachol echol rak KZayis echad shel matzah.
Sheoshel and pricha, he's saying a diarrhea and a rash, which
Fantastic.
is
Okay.
possible.
I
Thank you.
got flowering.
I got
Yeah, flour. That's just if you write, but that's just if you put in pricha. But when you put pricha with shilshul, it says a rash. So in other words, if you have diarrhea, you get a rash. No,
Not necessarily.
it's painful.
Look up the word constipation. Go backwards and just out of curiosity.
Okay.
I guess these are important words to know if you're in Israel for Pesach. I guess you should know the difference
They're very
between
busy, I heard, in Pesach.
what the
In the hospital
pharmacies.
emergency.
Yeah, oh,
That's why
really?
they always have articles afterwards.
Yeah.
Mostly Ashkenazim, probably.
Okay. So therefore, you've gotten your prescription as far as what to do when you can only have one KZayis. Now, I want to, again, give a disclaimer. We're not suggesting that if a person could come to a sakana by eating a KZayis, that he should force himself to eat a KZayis. The Zilberstein's directive is only when there's for sure no sakana, not even a suffix sakana.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so be very careful. If a person has, let's say, Crohn's, God forbid, so then it would not be permitted for them to even eat one KZayis of Matzah. We're talking about the celiac person who is not going to come to a situation of sakana. Okay, so I think this is a good place to hold it.